Emily Kado was just 24 years old when her life ended in a brutal, unimaginable way. Born and raised in Sarasota, Florida, she grew up just a short drive from the marine park she would one day call home. From a young age, Emily was captivated by the ocean, not merely for its shimmering beauty, but for the mysterious creatures that inhabited its depths. While most girls her age plastered their walls with posters of pop stars, Emily's bedroom told a different story. It was filled with photographs of orcas, dolphins, and vibrant coral reefs, symbols of a world she longed to understand and protect. By the age of 19, Emily had secured a coveted internship at OceanWorld Marine Park, a gateway into the marine world she'd dreamed about since childhood. Her dedication and calm demeanor quickly set her apart. Just 2 years later, she was a full-time trainer, and by 23, Emily had earned the rare and prestigious title of Senior Orca Handler, a role few her age ever achieved. This promotion brought immense responsibility, but Emily was more than qualified. Her colleagues often said she possessed a rare gift, a calming presence that even the most unpredictable orcas seemed to recognize and respond to. She had forged a bond with Vesper, one of the park's most powerful orcas, deeper than any other trainer. As one fellow trainer later recalled, there were times when Vesper would ignore everyone else, but when Emily walked in, he'd surface like he'd been waiting just for her. It was a connection built on trust, or so everyone believed. Emily was convinced that harmony between humans and these massive predators was possible. But as the old saying warns, you can teach a lion tricks, but you must never forget. It still remembers the hunt. Vesper, despite his gentle moments, never forgot. OceanWorld Marine Park had been a popular attraction since its opening in 1986, drawing over 1,200,000 visitors annually. Families flocked to the park from around the globe, eager to witness dolphins performing breathtaking tricks, sea lions leaping through fiery hoops, and orcas executing awe-inspiring aerial stunts. Yet beneath the dazzling spectacle, the reality was far less serene. The park's Orca program, a dazzling display to the public, masked troubling truths about the emotional and ethical costs of keeping these colossal predators captive. For years, animal rights groups protested the park's practices, but OceanWorld remained unfazed. The public's adoration for the shows and the steady profits they generated seemed to shield the park from scrutiny. But cracks were beginning to appear. Audience numbers started to dwindle, and internal reports revealed a disturbing pattern. The orca's behavior was becoming erratic and unpredictable. Training sessions lost their precision, and performances grew more volatile. The warning signs were there, but few wanted to admit the danger lurking beneath the surface. Among these magnificent animals, Vesper was not just another orca. He was one of the largest and most formidable, a 6-ton bull whose sheer size demanded respect. Born in captivity under tragic circumstances, Vesper's mother died during transport when he was only a calf, a trauma that left him with unresolved pain. Unlike other orcas bred in captivity over generations, Vesper never experienced the crucial emotional and physical bonding typical in the wild. Orcas, especially males, are known to form tight-knit family bonds. But that bond was violently severed for Vesper at an early age. This loss fueled unpredictable and sometimes aggressive behavior that trainers struggled to understand or control. On good days, Vesper moved in graceful synchronicity with his trainers, captivating audiences with flawless performances that seemed to speak of a deep connection. Yet on darker days, his eyes would glaze over, his movements sharp and jerky, his aggression barely contained. It was as if Vesper bore a silent grudge against the world and the life forced upon him. In the weeks leading up to Emily's final show, his behavior worsened. Shooters noticed he became withdrawn, refusing commands and swimming in tight, frustrated circles. His tail slapping the water was no longer a playful gesture, but a warning sign of mounting agitation. Emily sensed the shift too, but hoped it was temporary, trusting her years of experience with him. However, the truth is that no matter how well you think you know a wild animal, its instincts simmer just beneath the surface. No amount of training can suppress that primal spirit. As the days passed, the situation got worse. It was almost as if Vesper was testing the fragile boundaries of his connection with Emily. He would deliberately refuse to swim on cue, ignoring her commands. instead retreating to the farthest corner of the pool, where he circled endlessly, as though waiting for something unseen. His once calm and almost affectionate eyes had grown cold and distant, sending a chilling message that Emily could feel deep in her bones. But it wasn't just his refusal to perform that unsettled her. Vesper had started charging the underwater gates, a dangerous behavior known to manifest in orcas who had grown deeply frustrated with captivity. This wasn't mere aggression, it was a primal, desperate attempt to escape. Each thunderous slam of his massive 6-ton body against the steel barriers sent shockwaves through the pool, rattling the structure and echoing like a roar of fury. It was the raw power of nature pushing against the confines of man-made cages, a visceral cry for freedom. Emily's concern grew into alarm. She couldn't ignore the signs any longer. Determined, she meticulously documented his erratic behavior. The tail slaps that shook the water, the violent charges at the gates, his stubborn refusal to cooperate during training. In a detailed report sent directly to OceanWorld senior management, Emily warned plainly, he's not safe to work with. She begged them to reconsider allowing Vesper to perform at the upcoming summer shows, emphasizing the growing danger, but her warnings fell on deaf ears. The reply was cold and dismissive. "He just needs more stimulation," a senior manager wrote back, brushing off the concerns with a corporate indifference that prioritized spectacle and profit over safety. The show, they insisted, must go on. The park's summer performances were already sold out. A scandal was the last thing they wanted so close to the season's launch. Emily was promised her concerns would be monitored, but the decision was final. Vesper would perform. Emily remained unconvinced. She knew Vesper didn't need distractions. He needed space, freedom, the chance to live as an orca, not a performer in a tank. But at OceanWorld, freedom was a luxury no captive animal could afford. The louder the warning signs, the more management chose to ignore them, turning a blind eye until it was far too late. That blazing summer afternoon, OceanWorld was packed with 2,500 guests eagerly awaiting the 300th live show of the season. The air buzzed with excitement, unaware that a nightmare was about to unfold. Emily had prepared for weeks, working tirelessly with Vesper, despite the nagging unease settling in her mind. She stepped into the pool, wetsuit snug, a slight smile masking her anxiety. Today was supposed to be a milestone, a celebration of her hard work and bond with Vesper. But as the show began, the fragile calm shattered. The crowd erupted as Emily and Vesper moved in perfect synchrony, the orca's sleek body slicing through the water with grace and power. Emily's heart swelled with pride. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. Then, as the final act approached, a high-energy synchronized finale, Vesper's demeanor shifted. Witnesses would later describe the horror in chilling detail. He broke formation, swam behind Emily, and without warning, lunged. In an instant, the companion Emily had trusted for years became a predator. Vesper clamped his massive jaws around her waist, thrashing her violently through the water. Spinning her like a rag doll, he unleashed a strength beyond anything she could have anticipated. Her body was no match for the 6-ton beast. The crowd's initial confusion gave way to panic as screams filled the air, the terrifying reality sinking in. Staff rushed to intervene, but they were helpless, too far away to reach her in time. Emergency protocols activated as lifeguards scrambled to distract Vesper with buzzers and nets. But the orca's grip only tightened. His fury was unyielding. As chaos engulfed the arena, spectators near the pool saw blood streaking the water, crimson mixing with the once clear blue. The scene turned macabre, Emily's lifeless form tossed mercilessly beneath the surface. Desperate, trainers hurled nets and fish buckets, whistles and claps, anything to break Vesper's hold. But he was no longer the trained animal they had known. Instinct had taken over, a force of nature reclaiming dominion in a cruel, tragic spectacle. Every passing second diminished hope. The audience, frozen in shock, was evacuated, yet no one could tear their eyes away from the horror unfolding before them. It took 29 agonizing minutes for rescue teams to retrieve Emily's body from the water. In that unbearable span, staff clung to a fragile hope that the worst scenario would not happen. But it was too late. When paramedics finally reached Emily, their worst fears were heartbreakingly confirmed. The cold, clinical pronouncement of death sent a shudder through the entire rescue team. Emily Kado, the bright, dedicated young woman who had devoted her life to the animals she loved, was gone. There was no chance for revival. The damage was irrevocable. The following day, an autopsy revealed the devastating extent of her injuries, sending shockwaves through OceanWorld and the broader marine community. Emily had suffered multiple blunt force traumas consistent with the overwhelming power of Vesper's massive tail strikes and violent thrashing underwater. The force of a 6-ton orca's body colliding with a human is enough to cause internal bleeding, broken bones, and unspeakable pain. Yet perhaps the most harrowing discovery was that Emily had drowned. Despite being pulled from the water, the damage had already been done. Vesper had held her beneath the surface too long, cutting off her last breath. The autopsy also found significant tissue loss on her legs and shoulders, confirming that Vesper's bite was not only powerful, but brutally forceful. It was clear Vesper hadn't just attacked, he had torn at her with raw animal instinct, fueled by years of captivity, rage, and frustration. The loss was profound. Emily was a young woman full of promise, love, and dedication, snatched away in an instant. Friends and colleagues were left grappling with grief, struggling to make sense of a tragedy that felt impossible to understand. As the old saying goes, the sea takes what it wants, when it wants. But this was no natural act of the sea. It was a tragedy born from captivity, broken trust, and a creature pushed beyond its limits. In the chaotic hours following Emily's death, OceanWorld's management and PR teams swung into damage control mode. A carefully crafted statement was released that evening, calling the incident a tragic accident during a training demonstration. The language was measured and designed to downplay the severity, painting the attack as an unforeseeable mishap. Not once did the statement mention Emily's prior warnings, the signs of Vesper's growing aggression, or the detailed emails she had sent management pleading for action. But behind closed doors, the truth began to leak. Troubled employees, dismayed by the park's response, anonymously sent whistleblower emails to journalists and investigators. One explosive message revealed they deleted all behavior reports from Vesper's file. Everything flagged about his aggression, every sign of stress, wiped clean. They don't want anyone to know how bad it really was. The corporate denial that buried the warning signs was unraveling, exposing a culture that prioritized profits over safety. Despite public outrage and calls for accountability, the government's investigation into Emily's death quickly lost momentum. Park lawyers managed to control information flow, and the inquiry concluded with a weak statement. No criminal charges would be filed. The inquiry's failure to deliver justice left the public with unanswered questions and a lingering sense of injustice. Vesper was removed from the public eye, confined to an isolated tank far from the crowds and shows. But this was no punishment for the tragedy. It was a symbolic gesture to calm public fear. Vesper remained a prisoner, locked away in solitude, far from the freedom of the ocean he was born to roam. As the saying goes, a leopard doesn't change its spots. Though alone, the scars of captivity ran deep. No matter how much OceanWorld tried to conceal the truth, those who understood the full story knew the death of Emily Kado was no accident. It was the inevitable result of neglect, corporate greed, and a system that valued spectacle over the well-being of living beings. The park's shows continued, profits soared, but the shadow of that horrific day, the blood in the water, haunted those who knew. For Emily's family, friends, and colleagues, the nightmare was far from over. 2 months after the attack, OceanWorld quietly ended its live orca shows without fanfare or explanation, as if erasing the incident from memory. Yet for those who witnessed June 5th's horror, the scars remained, a painful reminder that some wounds never truly heal. Behind the scenes, Vesper's fate was sealed in secrecy. Under cover of darkness, he was transferred to an off-site veterinary facility under the guise of rehabilitation. But the real motive was clear: to distance the park from the disaster and bury a symbol of its failure. Removed from public view, Vesper became a ghost, no longer the star of sold-out shows, but a hushed rumor among staff. A storm quietly brewing beneath the surface, waiting to break. Anonymous employees began leaking damning information about Vesper's behavior, details far darker than OceanWorld ever wanted the public to know. One chilling email described an incident just a month after the attack. Vesper had violently attacked a male trainer during feeding. The trainer escaped by luck alone. The email warned that Vesper had become a ticking time bomb, his aggression boiling over with no one knowing when he might explode again. In isolation, the Orca's frustration and rage had only intensified, transforming him from a trained performer into a dangerous, unpredictable force. Yet OceanWorld desperately tried to silence these truths. They refused to acknowledge the deep damage, not only to Emily, but to Vesper himself. The Orca was becoming a living symbol of what happens when a wild animal is pushed too far, but the park had no intention of letting that story see the light of day. As months passed, public curiosity about Vesper's fate grew, but the park remained tight-lipped. Rumors swirled wildly. Some claimed Vesper had been euthanized to prevent further incidents. Others said he'd been shipped off to a foreign facility where his increasingly volatile behavior could be hidden or ignored. The truth became as murky as the waters in which he once swam freely. Vesper's fate, shrouded in secrecy, mirrored the tragedy of captivity itself, a prisoner locked away in the shadows, his powerful presence reduced to whispers and speculation. While many dismissed him as out of sight, out of mind, those who knew the full story understood the scars left by Emily's death, and Vesper's treatment would never truly heal. The public's response to Emily Kado's death was explosive and immediate. What began as a whispered tragedy soon grew into an unstoppable storm, shaking the foundation of OceanWorld and the entire marine park industry. Social media became a battleground, with tweets, posts, and the hashtag Justice for Emily rapidly gaining traction. Voices from all corners, animal rights activists, everyday citizens, and influential figures demanded accountability. Anger and grief mingled as questions flooded the internet. How could this have happened? Why were Emily's warnings ignored? The backlash intensified daily, amplified by YouTube channels dedicated to animal rights and major news outlets covering the story extensively. Emily's death became a rallying cry, symbolizing a turning point in the fight against orca captivity. The message was clear: enough was enough. A tat-tap, tap-tap. One of the most powerful manifestations of this movement was a petition calling for an end to captive orca performances. The petition resonated globally, gathering over 1,400,000 signatures from people who had never set foot in a marine park but were united in solidarity with Emily and the countless animals imprisoned in captivity. OceanWorld, once a booming empire, quickly felt the sting of public outrage. Their stock price plummeted as discontent spread. Visitors who had once eagerly purchased tickets now stayed away, their voices joining a growing chorus demanding change. The tide was turning. Soon, marine mammal shows across the country began to close. Other parks, sensing the shifting public mood, quietly scaled back their orca performances. The industry faced a reckoning it could not ignore. As the old saying goes, what's done in the dark will always come to light. For OceanWorld, the darkness had been brutally exposed. Emily Kado's death became a watershed moment, a painful legacy that sparked a global movement demanding the end of orca exploitation in captivity, and that movement continues to grow, fueled by the memory of a young woman who dared to believe in harmony and paid the ultimate price for it.